They say a promise is the most fragile thing in the world. And mine was broken in ways I could never imagine. I was a husband, a father, a man with nothing but love in his hands. When my wife died, I swore at her grave that I would protect our daughter, no matter the cost. I thought sacrifice would save her. I thought working abroad would give her a future. But the man I trusted most, my own best friend, stole not only the money I sent, but also her childhood. This is not just a story about betrayal. This is the story of how far a father can fall, and how far he must rise to fight for his daughter, for justice, and for the promise he made long ago. I still remember the day of her funeral as if it happened an hour ago. The morning was heavy, the sky dark and swollen with clouds. Rain fell softly, not enough to soak us but enough to remind us that even heaven was mourning. The graveyard smelled of wet earth, the kind of smell that makes you feel the weight of finality. My wife's coffin, plain and wooden, rested on ropes as men lowered it into the ground. Each thud of dirt on the lid was like a hammer striking my chest. Beside me, my daughter clutched my hand with tiny fingers. She was only 7 then, too young to understand fully, but old enough to know that life had stolen something precious from her. Her cheeks were wet, her eyes wide and broken. She looked up at me and whispered, "Papa, where is Mama going?" My throat closed. My heart screamed. How do you explain death to a child? I bent down, kissed her hair, and whispered, "Mama is going to the sky, my love. She will watch over you from there." She looked up, searching the gray clouds for a face she would never see again. Then she buried her face into my chest, and I held her as if I could protect her from the cruelty of the world. That night, after the mourners had gone and silence filled our small house, I sat alone in the dark. My daughter lay asleep, holding a piece of her mother's scarf like a shield against nightmares. I stared at the walls. I had nothing. No land, no savings, not even a stable job. Every coin I had was spent on medicine that couldn't save my wife. How was I supposed to raise a daughter alone? How could I keep that promise I made at the graveyard? I thought of her future, her schooling, her clothes, her meals. I thought of all the little things she would need as she grew. And I realized that love alone was not enough. She needed food. She needed stability. She needed opportunity. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I would leave. I would go abroad, work under the burning sun, send money back, and build her a home. I would suffer so she could smile. I would sacrifice my presence so she could have a future. But the truth is, when a father leaves, even for love, he leaves behind a wound. The next morning, I sat my daughter down. I stroked her hair and said, "Papa has to go away for some time. I will work and send money. I will build us a house. I will give you everything." Her face fell. She clung to me and cried, "Papa, don't go. Please don't go." Her voice broke me. My heart wanted to tear up the papers, to burn the idea, to hold her forever. But then I looked at the empty shelves, the unpaid rent, the little stomach that went hungry more nights than I could admit. I whispered, "My love, I am not leaving you forever. I am leaving to make sure you have a better life." She didn't understand. She only knew her mother was gone, and now her father was leaving too. That night she cried herself to sleep in my lap. I stayed awake, watching her small chest rise and fall, wondering if I was destroying her life in the name of saving it. But I had no choice. I needed someone to care for her. And so I turned to the man I trusted most, my childhood friend. We had grown up together, shared meals, shared secrets. When my wife was sick, he helped me. He felt like a brother. I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "She is my life. Take care of her until I return." He looked me in the eye and said, "Don't worry. She will be safe with me. Work hard, build her future. Leave the rest to me." And like a fool, I believed him. The day of my departure came too quickly. My daughter stood at the doorway of our small rented house, holding her mother's scarf in one hand and waving with the other. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Every step I took felt like tearing my soul apart. I turned back again and again, forcing a smile, waving as if leaving was a game. At the airport, I almost turned back. I almost threw the ticket away. But then I thought of her dreams. Her school. Her future. I told myself, this pain is temporary. One day, she will thank me. On the plane, I pressed my forehead against the cold window. The city lights blurred into nothing. I whispered to myself, stay strong. Do this for her. I didn't know then that I was stepping into a prison of labor, that I would spend years breaking my body under foreign skies. And I didn't know that back home, my daughter was living in a prison of silence, guarded by the very man I trusted. I thought my sacrifice would save her. But the truth is, my sacrifice became her cage. That night, as the plane lifted into the clouds, I carried hope in my chest. Hope that my daughter would one day smile at me and say, Papa, you kept your promise. But fate had other plans. Fate was sharpening its knife in the hands of my friend. Fate was about to show me that promises are fragile, and betrayal cuts deeper than death. This is where my story begins. I thought leaving home would hurt only once, at the airport, in that moment when my daughter's tears followed me through the glass gates. But the truth is, the pain didn't stay behind. It traveled with me. It slept beside me in a foreign land, woke me up every morning, and whispered in my ear every night. Life abroad is not a dream. It is a prison with open skies. The first days were the hardest. I arrived in a country I didn't know, surrounded by a language I couldn't speak, streets I couldn't read, faces that looked at me not as a man, but as cheap labor. The air smelled of dust and sweat. The heat was suffocating. I remember stepping off the bus into the labor camp, rows of metal containers lined up like cages, each one packed with men who had left their families just like I had. Inside, there was no privacy, no comfort. 10, 12 men in a single room, all of us lying on iron bunks with thin mattresses, the smell of sweat and despair mixing in the air. At night, some cried quietly into their pillows, others stared at the ceiling with empty eyes. But I held on to one thing, my daughter's face. Whenever I felt weak, I pulled her picture from my pocket and whispered to it, "This is for you. Papa will not give up." The work was brutal. Long hours under a burning sun that showed no mercy. We carried bricks, mixed cement, lifted steel. My hands blistered until they bled. My back screamed with pain. Sometimes I thought my bones would break. But I didn't stop. Because every drop of sweat, every scar, was a coin in my daughter's future. At night, when the other men collapsed into sleep, I sat on the floor with a piece of paper. I wrote letters to my daughter. My love, Papa is far away, but my heart is always with you. I am working hard. One day I will come home, and we will live together in a big house. Be strong for me. I love you. I poured my soul into those letters. They were the only bridge I had. Phone calls were too expensive. 1 minute cost a whole day's wage. And even when I managed to call, I could never speak freely, because my friend, the man I left her with, was always nearby. He listened, controlling the conversation, making sure my daughter never told me the truth. So I trusted the letters. I sent them through him, believing he would deliver them. I imagined my daughter reading my words, feeling my love across the miles. I imagined her smiling when she saw my handwriting, sleeping peacefully knowing her father had not abandoned her. But I didn't know the letters were vanishing. That he never gave them to her. That he hid them, destroyed them, tore down the only bridge I was trying to build. For years, I kept writing. For years, I kept believing. The money I sent was the same. Month after month, I sacrificed everything, food, clothes, comfort, just to save a few extra notes to send home. I dreamed of building a small house, of sending her to college, of giving her the life her mother had wanted for her. I lived on bread and water some days, just so my daughter could live better. But the money didn't build her future. It built his. Brick by brick, my friend used my sweat to raise his own house. My wages bought his car, his land, his business. While I worked like a slave under foreign skies, he became a master in my homeland. And all the while, he kept my daughter close, too close, under the shadow of his lies. There were moments, though, when I felt something wasn't right. Sometimes, when I managed to speak to her on the phone, her voice was trembling. She never spoke much. She only said, "Papa, please come home." I thought she was sad, that she missed me. I didn't know those words were cries for help, coded messages hidden in plain sight. She couldn't tell me more, because he was always listening. And I was blind. Years passed like that. Work, sweat, money sent, letters written. My body aged faster than time. My hair turned gray, my back bent. But I told myself it was worth it. That one day, when I returned, my daughter would run into my arms, and everything would make sense. I didn't know that every day I stayed away was another day of her suffering. That while I sacrificed my body, she was sacrificing her soul. One night, years later, my phone rang. It was her. But this time, her voice was different. It was quiet, shaking, like she was hiding. She whispered, "Papa, please listen. I have to tell you something. Don't get angry. Don't cry. Just, come back." And then she told me everything. The line crackled, but her words cut through me like knives. How he had never given her my letters. How he had used my money to build his empire. And worst of all, how he had trapped her, stolen her innocence, broken her spirit. She had been living in silence, too afraid to speak, too broken to fight. As she spoke, my chest tightened. My heart cracked into pieces. The room spun. I fell to my knees, clutching the phone as if I could hold her through it. I wanted to scream, to break the walls, to kill the distance that separated us. When the call ended, I sat in the dark, shattered. Everything I had worked for, every sacrifice, every dream, it had all been twisted into a nightmare. That night, I made another promise. I would leave everything behind. I would go back, not as a man chasing money, but as a father demanding justice. I would face him. I would fight him. And I would rebuild the promise I had once broken. My time abroad was over. My prison sentence had ended. Now, it was time to return, and this time, I was not coming back empty-handed. I was coming back with fire in my heart. Coming home after years away should feel sweet. But for me, it was bitter poison. I had left with dreams in my eyes, promises on my lips, and hope in my heart. Now I was returning with nothing but anger, heartbreak, and the weight of betrayal crushing my soul. The land I once loved, the streets I once walked with pride, I didn't know how I would face them. Because this was not the homecoming of a victorious father. This was the return of a broken man. The airport smelled different. For years I had imagined this moment, walking out, seeing my daughter, embracing her with tears of joy. I had replayed it in my head 1,000 times. But reality was cruel. She wasn't there. There was no one waiting with flowers, no smile, no warm arms. Just silence. I stepped out of those glass doors and looked around. My chest tightened. I saw families laughing, wives crying into their husbands' shoulders, children running into their fathers' arms. And I stood alone. Because the only person I wanted to see had been living in chains of fear all these years. I hired a taxi. The city passed by in flashes, streets wider than I remembered, tall buildings where empty fields once stood. But none of it mattered. My eyes were fixed on one thought, my daughter. What state would I find her in? Would she even recognize me? Would she hate me for leaving her? The car turned into a narrow lane, and my heart raced. Every beat was a hammer inside my chest. And then I saw her. She stood in the doorway of a small house, thin, pale, her eyes carrying the shadows of years she should never have lived. When she saw me, she froze. For a moment, the world stopped. Then, with trembling steps, she walked forward. "Papa." Her voice cracked like dry earth breaking under rain. I dropped my bag, and in that moment, I didn't care about the years, the lies, the pain. I wrapped her in my arms. She was no longer the little girl I had left. She was a young woman now, scarred but still mine. My tears soaked her hair as I whispered, "I'm here. I'm not leaving you again. Never." But even in that embrace, I felt the weight of what had been done to her. Her body was stiff, her heart heavy. She had learned to live without me. And I had to earn back her trust, her love, her belief that a father could still protect her. We sat inside the house. She made me tea with shaking hands, trying to hide her pain behind a forced smile. But I saw it. I saw the emptiness in her eyes, the silence between her words. And then I asked, softly, "Tell me everything. Don't hide from me now. I'm here. I'll listen." Her lips trembled. She looked down at her hands, twisting them together. And then, like a dam breaking, her story poured out. How he, the man I had trusted, my own childhood friend, had betrayed me. How he never gave her my letters, never let her speak freely to me on the phone. How he took the money I sent and used it to build his empire. And worst of all, how he had taken advantage of her innocence, trapping her in fear and silence. Every word she spoke stabbed me deeper. I wanted to cover my ears, to deny it, to believe it wasn't true. But her tears, her broken voice, her scars, they were the truth I could not run from. I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. My blood boiled. My head pounded. Rage unlike anything I had ever known surged through me. I wanted to storm out, find him, and tear him apart with my bare hands. But she placed her hand on mine and whispered, "Papa, please, don't lose yourself. I just need you to stay. To fight for me. To fight the right way." Her words stopped me. They pulled me back from the edge. I realized this wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. About giving her the life she deserved, without more blood, without more pain. So I swallowed my rage, but I didn't kill it. I buried it deep inside, where it burned like fire. The next day, I went to see him. I walked through the gates of the house he had built with my sweat. Marble floors, tall pillars, shining windows. It was a palace compared to the shack my daughter had been forced to live in. My heart twisted with fury. He came out, wearing expensive clothes, a fake smile plastered on his face. "My brother," he said, opening his arms as if I was still blind to his betrayal. "You're back." I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw the devil behind the mask. "I trusted you," I said, my voice shaking with controlled rage. "I gave you my money, my child, my faith. And you destroyed everything." His smile faded, but his arrogance remained. He shrugged. "You left, brother. You abandoned her. Someone had to take care of her. Someone had to use the money wisely. Don't blame me for filling the gap you created." My fists tightened. I wanted to hit him right there. But I remembered my daughter's words. Fight the right way. So I leaned closer, my voice cold as steel. "You stole my daughter's childhood. You stole my money. You stole years of my life. But you will not steal her future. I will fight you. I will expose you. And I will not stop until justice is done. He smirked, as if untouchable. Do what you want. I have power. I have lawyers. I have friends. And you're just a broken man who came home too late. Those words burned into me. But I didn't answer. I just walked away. Because I knew, the fight had only just begun. That night, as my daughter slept, I sat awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind was a storm. I had no money, no influence, no allies. He had everything. Power, wealth, connections. But I had something stronger, truth. And I swore on my wife's memory, on every drop of sweat I had shed abroad, on every tear my daughter had cried, I would not rest until justice was served. This was no longer just my story. It was hers. And together, we would fight. The night after I walked out of his palace, I couldn't sleep. My body was in my bed, but my mind was still standing in front of him, replaying his smug smile, his arrogant words. You're just a broken man who came home too late. Those words echoed like poison in my head. He thought I was weak. He thought the years abroad had drained me, that my bones and heart were too old to fight. But he was wrong. The next morning, I held my daughter's hand and said, "We're going to the police." She looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. "Papa, they won't believe us. He has power. He has people." Her fear was real. I knew she wasn't exaggerating. In this country, justice wasn't simple. It bent for the rich, for those who had connections, for those who could buy silence. My friend, no, my enemy, had spent years building influence while I was breaking my back abroad. But I had no choice. If I stayed silent, my daughter's pain would remain buried. And I couldn't let that happen. At the police station, the air smelled of sweat and dust. Old files piled high on wooden desks. Officers moved lazily, as if justice was not a duty but a burden. When I told them my story, they barely lifted their heads. He stole your money. That's a civil case. Go to court. He abused your daughter. Where's the proof? Do you have recordings? Do you have witnesses? Their words cut deeper than knives. Proof. Witnesses. My daughter's tears weren't enough. My broken heart wasn't enough. I slammed my hand on the table. I have my bank receipts. I sent money every month. I have letters I wrote, but he never gave them. And I have my daughter. Her voice, her testimony. Isn't that enough? The officer looked bored. Maybe. Maybe not. File your complaint. But don't expect miracles. We left the station with heavy hearts. My daughter clutched my arm, whispering, "Papa, maybe we should stop. Maybe we can't win." I knelt in front of her. "Listen to me. You've been silent for too long. They stole your childhood, but they will not steal your justice. We will fight, even if the world stands against us." And so, the battle began. The courtroom was another kind of battlefield. Wooden benches, cold walls, a judge who looked down at us as if measuring our worth. My enemy sat across the room, in an expensive suit, his lawyers beside him, whispering strategies. He didn't look like a criminal. He looked like a man of power. That was his weapon, appearances. His lawyer stood tall. "Your Honor, this man," he pointed at me, "left the country. He abandoned his daughter. He trusted my client to take care of her. Now, after years, he returns with baseless accusations, trying to destroy a good man's reputation. There is no evidence of abuse. There is no evidence of stolen money. These are only words of desperation." Each sentence felt like a dagger. I wanted to scream, to tell the judge about my sleepless nights, about my daughter's tears. But my lawyer, a kind man who agreed to help us for little money, held my shoulder. Patience. Truth needs patience. Then it was my turn. I stood up. My knees trembled, but my voice carried the weight of years. Your Honor, I am not a perfect man. I left my country, yes. But I left to save my daughter. To give her a better future. I sent money every month. I wrote letters every night. But I pointed at my enemy, my former friend, he destroyed everything. He took my money. He hid my letters. He broke my daughter's spirit. And now he stands here, pretending to be honorable. But honor cannot be built on stolen lives. The judge watched silently. My daughter, sitting beside me, looked down, tears sliding down her cheeks. The trial dragged on for months. Date after date, hearing after hearing. Each time, his lawyers twisted the story, tried to make me look like a liar, tried to shame my daughter into silence. But she was braver than I ever imagined. She stood before the court, her voice shaking but steady enough to tell her truth. Yes, he hurt me. Yes, he controlled me. Yes, he took everything from us. The courtroom fell silent when she spoke. Even the judge leaned forward, listening. Her pain was undeniable. But my enemy wasn't finished. He used his money to spread lies in the media. Headlines appeared, father abandons daughter, blames friend for his own mistakes. Neighbors whispered. Some people avoided us, afraid of his power. Those were dark days. Some nights, I sat on the floor, head in my hands, asking myself if I had the strength to continue. But then my daughter would bring me a cup of tea, sit beside me, and whisper, Papa, don't give up. Not now. We're too close. Her strength became mine. Finally, after months of fighting, we had a breakthrough. The bank statements told the truth. Every transfer I made was traced. But instead of being used for my daughter, the money was deposited into his business accounts. The judge studied the documents. The courtroom buzzed. For the first time, his mask cracked. His confidence wavered. And then, another truth surfaced. One of his old employees, a man who once worked in his business, stepped forward. He testified that he had seen my daughter crying, begging for help. He admitted he had stayed silent out of fear, but guilt had eaten him alive. That testimony was the final stone. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom, this court finds the accused guilty of financial fraud and abuse. He is hereby sentenced according to the law. My daughter squeezed my hand. Tears streamed down her face. They were not tears of pain this time. They were tears of relief. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. For years, I had dreamed of this moment, not revenge, but justice. The chains were broken. The truth had won. As they led him away in handcuffs, he glared at me. His eyes still carried arrogance, still burning with hate. But it didn't matter anymore. His power was gone. His lies were exposed. His empire was dust. I turned to my daughter, cupped her face in my hands, and whispered, "It's over. You're free now." And for the first time in years, she smiled. A real smile. That night, we sat together in our small home, drinking tea, laughing softly. The shadows were still there, but they were fading. I looked at her and said, "From tomorrow, we start again. A new life. A new beginning. I'll help you build your dreams." She nodded. "Papa, I want to open a salon. I want to be a beautician. That's my dream." I smiled. "Then that's what we'll do. Together." The scars would never fully disappear. But slowly, with love, with hope, with time, we would heal. And as I held her hand, I realized, this was not the end of our story. This was the beginning. That night after the verdict, my daughter slept peacefully for the first time in years. I watched her from the doorway, the rise and fall of her chest, the calm on her face. For so long, I had only seen her cry in silence, carrying burdens too heavy for her young shoulders. But now, the storm had passed. Justice had spoken. And yet, I knew, winning in court was not the end. It was only the first step. Because the scars inside her heart and the emptiness in our lives could not be erased by a single judgment. We had to rebuild. Brick by brick, smile by smile. The next morning, as we sat together over tea, she looked at me shyly. "Papa, do you really mean it? About my dream?" I reached across the table, held her hand firmly, and smiled. "I meant every word. From today, your dream is my mission. You wanted to open a beauty salon, right?" Her eyes lit up, a spark I hadn't seen since she was a child. "Yes. I've always loved it. Makeup, hair, helping women feel beautiful. Mama used to say I had an artist's hands." Hearing her speak of her mother made my chest ache. My wife was gone, taken from us too soon, but I knew if she were alive, she would be smiling right now, proud of her daughter's courage. I nodded. "Then let's do it. We'll start small. We don't need luxury. We just need a place where you can shine." The following weeks were a whirlwind. We visited markets, looked at shops for rent, spoke to suppliers. Money was tight, most of what I had was gone, stolen in those wasted years abroad. But we had one thing stronger than money: determination. Every step we took felt like planting seeds. We found a small shop on a busy street corner. The walls were cracked, the floor uneven, the paint peeling. But when my daughter walked inside, her eyes sparkled. "Papa, this is it. I can see it already. Mirrors here, chairs there, colors on the walls. It will be beautiful." I didn't see beauty in that old shop. But I saw something better, hope in her eyes. That was enough. We worked day and night. I painted walls while she designed the layout. She picked soft colors, cream, light pink, gold. "I want it to feel warm," she said. "I want women to walk in and feel safe. Beautiful outside, but also peaceful inside." As I hammered nails and fixed shelves, I realized something: every stroke of paint, every screw tightened, was not just building a salon. It was repairing her soul. It was repairing mine. Opening day came faster than we expected. We had only a handful of chairs, 2 mirrors, and some borrowed tools. But my daughter stood in the doorway, wearing her best dress, her hair tied neatly, her smile nervous but shining. I put my hand on her shoulder and whispered, "You're not just opening a salon. You're opening your future. Be proud." The first customers were curious neighbors, women who had heard whispers of her story. Some came to support her, others came just to see. But when they sat in her chair and saw the care in her hands, the gentleness in her touch, they left smiling. And soon, word began to spread. "She's talented. She makes you feel special. She's not just doing hair, she's giving confidence." Day by day, more women walked through the door. And each time I saw her working, her eyes focused, her hands steady, I felt my heart swell with pride. For the first time in years, my daughter was not defined by her pain. She was defined by her passion. But rebuilding wasn't easy. There were days when money was short, when suppliers demanded more than we could pay. There were times when I doubted myself: had I done enough, could I protect her future? And there were still whispers in the community, people who gossiped, who said cruel things behind our backs. One evening, after closing, she sat beside me on the floor of the shop. "Papa, do you ever think about the past? About everything?" I sighed, staring at the walls. "Every day. But I don't let it control me anymore. The past hurt us, yes. But the past is gone. What matters is now. And right now, you are free. You are strong. You are building something beautiful. That's what I choose to see. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I don't know if I'll ever forget. But, with you here, I'm learning how to live again. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Instead, I held her hand tightly, silently thanking God for giving me the chance to be here, to see her rise again. Months turned into a year. The salon grew. What started with 2 mirrors became 4. What started with a trickle of customers became a steady stream. My daughter hired 2 young girls from the neighborhood, teaching them, guiding them, giving them the same strength she had found. And me? I became the man at the door, greeting customers, sweeping floors, fixing broken chairs. I was no longer the laborer in a foreign land. I was a father, standing proudly beside his daughter, building a future together. One evening, as we closed the shutters, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Papa, we did it. We really did it." I smiled, pulling her into my arms. "Yes, my love. We did. And this is only the beginning." Sometimes, when I lie awake at night, I think of the years I lost. The sweat I gave to a land that never cared. The trust one gave to a man who betrayed me. The innocence stolen from my daughter. But then I hear her laughter in the next room. I see her walking to the salon every morning with pride in her step. I see customers leaving with smiles, carrying pieces of her joy. And I realize, we may have lost years, but we didn't lose our future. Because the future is here. It's in every nail polished, every haircut styled, every mirror that reflects a woman smiling at herself. It's in my daughter's eyes when she looks at me and says, "Thank you, Papa, for not giving up." And it's in my own heart, finally at peace, knowing that though the promise was once broken, we rebuilt it together. And so, our story ends not with revenge, not with blood, not with pain, but with healing. With justice. With a father and daughter finding their way back to life. This is not just my story. It's the story of every man who sacrifices for his family, every daughter who survives pain, every heart that chooses to rise again. And to those listening now, if this story touched your heart, if it made you believe again in justice, in healing, in love, then join us. Subscribe to AineuraBeat, where stories like this live, where pain turns into power, and broken promises are rebuilt into hope. Because life is not about how hard you fall. It's about how strong you rise.